much for joining us today for this month's installment of Lead Better. As many of you guys know who have been following what we've been doing, Lead Better is our free virtual leadership experience where we like to bring in guests and have conversations around core leadership topics that we all face in the restaurant, whether it's trying to solve things internally from a system standpoint, or if it's something about trying to help us grow and advance in our careers, whether that's trying to move up in the restaurant or do LDP or become operators. My name is Alex Seal, and I've had the opportunity to work for the world's most caring company now for 22 years today. Actually, I think I got a notification on my phone that today was my 22nd year of employment there, and I wouldn't have it any other way. On tonight, we have our team here, Giovanna, Neff, and Ashley. I am fortunate enough to have a group of strong leaders who have decided to partner with us as we can continue to try to help leaders pivot into their next. Giovanna has been with the Chick-fil-A for over close to 24 years, almost 25 years. I was joking with her earlier today, saying that she is reaching her silver milestone in the business. And so she does an incredible job for us. She is really one of the strong arms that we have as it relates to helping people become better communicators, understanding the business as a whole. She is a juggernaut in that area. We also have Neff on the line. He represents our bilingual coaching leg of the business. He does a tremendous job with the Spanish-speaking community. And he really has, I can tell you just firsthand how good he is in pouring into people who speak Spanish. And so he's an incredible leader in that regard. And not only that, I've seen him work wonders with all levels of individuals. I don't want to put him in a box necessarily. And then, he's been with Chick-fil-A also for 10 years. And then we have Ashley Allison on the line with us. She is a coach here as well. She is now going on 8 years with Chick-fil-A. And congratulations are in order. Her husband just made it through and getting accepted into the LDP program. And so we're happy about that for sure. And on tonight, we have a very special guest with us. This is somebody who I started following on LinkedIn, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11 months ago. And his story was incredible. A lot of the things that he was posting on LinkedIn I thought was great. Just hearing his story. I had the opportunity to interview with him a few months ago, and I just really enjoyed his eagerness towards the business. A lot of the things that he likes to prioritize in the business align with things that I think are important. So he was nice enough to join us today and to be a guest on the show. Abram Moon, how are you doing today, sir?
Good evening. How you doing, guys?
Doing well. If you could, we're going to jump into our icebreaker. But before we do that, if you could just give us a quick rundown on who is Abram, why is Abram at Chick-fil-A, and what's next for Abram?
Man, that's a big question, but we're going to make it quick this evening. So my name's Abram. Been with Chick-fil-A 10 years, but outside of all that, and I'll get more on that in a second, I'm husband to a wife named Courtney, and I've got 2 girls. Almost 5-month-old. She'll be 5 months on the 30th. Her name's Clea, and I have a 2-year-old. Her name's Raina. And so they keep me pretty busy. As far as Chick-fil-A goes, I've been with Chick-fil-A since I was a teenager. Had no idea I wanted to make a career out of it, but I just fell in love with the culture of Chick-fil-A. And right now I'm pursuing becoming a Chick-fil-A franchisee. So I'm interviewing and making sure that I dot all my I's and cross all my T's and that sort of thing, and just continuing to try to be not just a great leader, but just a better person overall.
Thank you so much for that. And I apologize for this. I failed to say this in the beginning that this session is recorded. And we use this content, we replay this content throughout the future months. So just as people can kind of continue to learn from this, not just in this session, but going forward. So just letting you guys know that this will be recorded and will be used for promotional purposes. But so you're going to be the first person to experience this. We're going to change up how we start off our Lead Betters. And this is sort of an icebreaker. And so this will be our leadership non-negotiable. So I'm going to rapid fire some words at you, and then and you have to pick one. You can't straddle the fence. You can't be lukewarm. You know, as
when you straddle the fence, you get splinters. Now, I tell you, I don't like splinters. Okay.
All right. So we're gonna get started here. So here's the first set of words: empathy or accountability.
I would say empathy, right? You've got to understand where somebody's at before you can go start displaying accountability. I mean, maybe if you're a general and it's life or death, you know, you need a little bit more accountability quickly. But in the industry that we work in, we typically can go with more on the empathetic route first.
I was surprised at that answer. I thought you was going to say accountability, but I'll roll with empathy for sure.
If you had called me 2 years ago, or maybe even 4 years ago, I definitely would have said accountability first. But you know, as we grow, we evolve.
Yeah, no, you got that right. All right, next set of words: innovation or consistency.
Consistency. You can build and scale a business off consistency. But you want to innovate, but you want to innovate where you can scale it. You want to test it where you can scale it. But when you start affecting the customer experience, they don't know whether or not they're going to get a hot, chicken sandwich one day, or it's going to be cold the next day, or it's going to be fast or slow. Like, you've got to make sure that you are delivering on what you're known for. I mean, if all of a sudden somebody's coming in for a coaching session with you, but instead you start, I don't know, teaching them how to sing, they're going to be looking at you sideways.
Yeah. Well, you know, if you ask the guys, they might say that I might do that one day. I doubt it. Not necessarily singing, but
Okay.
all right. Next one: short-term results or long-term vision.
I would say long-term vision that will lead into long-term results. And the reason why is because, things change in the short term and long term. That's one thing I'm grateful about Chick-fil-A, that we are a privately held company, because you look at so many publicly owned companies, they struggle because they are chasing whatever the shareholders are telling them is going to get them a short-term result. So.
Awesome. Love that answer. I thought that would have been the easiest of the to answer. Next set of questions: recognition or development.
I would say development. And this is just my personality. I hate public recognition. I'm like, let's just get to whatever we're trying to get to. But if I can get something developed, then I'm going to learn something. So I'll be better because of whatever the experience is. And then theoretically, I would probably get recognition because I've been developed.
Excellent. All right. And this is I'm really interested to hear how you're going to answer this one.
Okay. Clear
expectations or freedom.
I would say clear expectations, but I do like somewhere around the middle. Like, I want clear expectations, but at the same time, I need flexibility and autonomy to try new things. But I need to know.
I hear the fence straddling a bit. Do I hear legs?
Just a little bit, just a little bit on this particular one. Because the reality of it is, I mean, if I have clear expectations, then I know what I'm going to go do. But B sometimes may need to come before A. It just depends on the situation. And I think as leaders, we should have the judgment, right, to know when to deploy those methods.
I also think that depends on your role and responsibility.
Oh, 100% agree. 100%.
So clear expectations, depending on where you're at. By the way, Alex, I love this game. But I think clear expectations for some levels of leadership, that's a necessity, but maybe in the role that you're currently in and or being an operator, like,
that's right,
the freedom is better. But that's awesome. I'll turn my mic back on. I mean, I'll turn myself back on mute.
No, this was expected. No problem. We're good. We're good. All right. Last one: results or relationships.
Ooh, results or relationships. I'm going to have to go with relationships. And the reason why is results are going to come and go, right? The economy's down, the economy's up. I mean, I cannot wait for February 2025 when the election is settled, the president is sworn in, and we can move on a little bit. Because the reality is that results are going to come and go. But when you think about relationships, they're long lasting, and you never want to sacrifice a relationship for a result. Yeah, we're in a for-profit business, but I think you can be clear, and when you're clear, you're kind. People want to know where they stand. So,
Excellent. Thank you so much for indulging us by participating in this. I know I kind of threw this at you last minute, but
That's
I think
okay.
you did a great job. And I want to let all the participants know that the chat is wide open. So during the course of this conversation, do not hesitate to throw questions into the chat box. Of course, depending on the nature of the question, we may field it right then or toward the back end of this, the last 15 minutes, we tend to consolidate all those questions and then we'll answer them as we go. But no, again, thank you so much, Abram. And then we'll just jump into the conversation. So today's conversation is going to be geared towards leading self and leading others. There are three really big competencies as it relates to what Chick-fil-A is looking for people who are wanting to become an operator, wanting to get into LDP. And those first two are about leading yourself, you driving results, and then you helping other people drive results. And so we really want to just have a conversation that is geared towards helping the people online understand the importance of themselves driving results and them helping other people drive results. And so my first question to you, Abram, is what's the biggest challenge you face when trying to drive results yourself, and how do you overcome those things?
I got to tell you, I think the biggest one will have to be time management. When you think about the role we're in a restaurant, right? At least in my role anyway. And so you have to find that fine balance between operational tasks, right? Serving the guests, serving the team in front of you, but also having time to have strategic oversight and strategic planning, right? There's an internal saying, you've probably heard it, you've got to work on the business and you've also got to work in the business, right? Because of working in it, you get a pulse, right? You can feel the culture. You can see how guests and customers are being served. But the thing is, it's that balance, right? You've got to know when to pull in, when to pull out. And it depends on the season. It depends on how many leaders you have, the types of leaders you have. And also, you've got to be able to give them room. And so I would say the biggest challenge is knowing when and what season we're in, right? As we think about 2025, QSR as a whole is down. And so with that being said, there are things that we may have wanted to work on as we went into 2024 planning that we had to pivot on simply because the margin was not there from a sales standpoint. And so, there's some days ahead, I think, where some of us may have to lock in operationally and positionally more than we have in the past, because if we cannot execute operationally in this season, it's going to be challenging for any of us, I would say, in the quick service industry, in this economy.
And I'm glad you said that, in particular to the state of the current economy. Of course, I think we've all went through COVID and the economy was shaky then. However, I think there were some external incentives or external things that kind of helped the stores continue to stay staffed and continue to do what they do. But I think it's important for us, particularly those who are on the line, who are wanting to become operators, who are wanting to become or get into LDP. I think a lot of times we've had the luxury of being a part of the brand where we've turned over these increases year after year. We've turned over these great successes year after year. However, we're really, as a whole, to your point, are seeing times where, wait, we're not up this month. What's going on? Transaction count is down. And so how do you, and you said it perfectly, just having that switch to say, hey, this season, I'm not so much on the business. I got to be in the business, not only from checking the pulse, but contributing to the financial of the organization. So I guess outside of the economic pressures, if those things did not exist, what are some triggers that would stimulate to you, hey, I need to get work on the business versus in it? Like, what are some factors, excluding the economic piece? And I know this is necessarily on our script, but you kind of took us there. But what are some triggering points to you that you observe in your business currently that says, hey, I need to take a step back and work on this thing and get more strategic in the planning versus getting into it?
I'll tell you, I think one of the first things is going to be people, right? If I come in and I notice certain people are not their typical selves, and I have a check-in with them and it seems like it's business related, right? That tells me maybe we've got some red flags within our culture we need to work on, right? If all of a sudden I notice some of our lagging metrics, like customer experience scores, are coming in and the comments that we're getting tell us that what we expect is not happening, right? when I experienced the business myself as a guest, right? As I told you, I have 2 young kids. One of my daughters loves Chick-fil-A, right? And so if I taste her food, and the fries aren't just right, those things for me make me start thinking like, what's going on here? Or if I just notice, right, based on the shift notes or turnover, we start losing people. Okay, what's causing that? I'm gonna want to jump in and figure out. Okay, let me work alongside these guys a little bit more than what I'm typically doing, or even popping in on a shift that maybe I don't typically work, to see what exactly is going on. Because, like I said, the fact of the matter is, if we cannot sustain where we're at operationally, from an excellence standpoint and consistency standpoint, we will not win in this economy. And so I think as leaders, we have to know our business, and we have to know our people that drive the business. And if we can, have different metrics to regulate that and to monitor that as a leading measures and lagging measures, then we should know when to jump in. And if not, I think that's where you've got to maybe seek counsel. I know accountability is on here later, but have truth tellers, right? You've got to have people in the business that are going to tell you the truth, right? If I ask my directors what is going on, what's the current state of the situation, I've got to know that they're going to tell me what's going on. They've got to be able to define reality. If we can't define reality, then maybe I've got to put you in a different seat on the bus, because the people that report to me are going to be the highest level leaders in the restaurant, and I've got to know that the reality they're seeing is the same reality that I'm seeing. Or if not, they've got some compelling reasonings as to why we're seeing two different sets of reality.
So you said a lot of good things there. I want to go back to the front end of your answer, and I think a lot of us don't do enough of this, is looking at the business as a consumer. I mean, you mentioned you're loving Chick-fil-A. I often say she was on here, but she popped in and popped out. But my wife, I use her as like the supreme idea of what the customer looks like. She's never worked in fast food. She does it, so she's not skewed in her thought processes in terms of or nothing like that. I mean, a couple people on the line can attest. She don't give us no type of no type of gray area in terms of the performance. And so I definitely think that it is important to put yourself in the seat of the customer. Even when you're talking about a lot of the things that are coming from the support center, a lot of dialogue has been observe your business as if you're not in it,
That's
as
right.
the customer. So I love that you brought that up. And I wanted to ask a follow-up question to the truth tellers piece that you brought up. What do you think goes into a culture that creates that body of truth tellers that you speak of? Because a lot of times, if I'm reporting up, the natural inclination is to just, I want to say I just want to say what's going to make the boss happy. You know what I mean? So how do you create that environment where you can get that real dialogue?
Don't quote me on this, but this has been in my leadership notes for 6 years now. I was at a conference and I heard a speaker say trust-based teams outperform non-trust-based teams by 276%. Okay. So you got to have the foundation of trust. And so when I came to this particular restaurant in 2020, they had been through a lot of turmoil. They had 3 ownership changes within 24 months. That is not typical at all within Chick-fil-A, right? Chick-fil-A tries to do a lot of research to try to make sure that the people they put in the restaurant are going to be there for the long haul. However, we know that people are people. And so sometimes things don't always work out the way we intend. And so as a result, I came into a team that was bruised, that had been through trials, tribulations, and were honestly sick of change. They were like, okay, how long are you here for? And so I had to build trust. I worked 6 days a week, and I didn't have a family at this point. So I didn't have 2 kids to come home to, but I worked 6 days for about 2 years straight. 15, 16 hours a day, building trust, working alongside people, showing them the same things that I was asking them to do, I was going to do it myself. And so then when we went and had conversations, I started off from the jump saying, hey, look, in order for this relationship to work, you got to tell me what you think. Like, if I offend you in the pressure of everything that's going on, I want to know that, right? So that I can get better. Like, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to come and be like, well, it's my way or the highway. You may see something from a whole different way of life, right? And the interesting thing about this team is I had people on my team that had been with Chick-fil-A longer than me. They were older than me. Like, a couple of my people that I'm leading and was leading at that time, were well in their 40s and 50s. And so here I am, a 22-year-old guy trying to lead these people and figure out truly now at this point, do I have what it takes to balance relationships and results? And as I continue to do that, we went through stuff together. We won together. We lost together. And I would say probably about 6 months in, they knew that I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. And meaning not so much from an aggressive standpoint, but more so like I walked my talk. Like if I'm going to ask you to do whatever, then I'm going to be right there beside you doing it. And so I would say you got to be a leader. That's a good example. I know this sounds basic, but I mean, it's just leadership 101. And there's so many leaders that can tell you about something, that can talk about something, but they can't do it. And I'll say that has been one of the major components that allowed me to build trust with the team that I serve.
Awesome. I love that. And I know we got some questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Do not fear. We were going to get to those questions for sure. We'll get to those towards the back end of it. Javon, did you have anything before we advance forward?
Well, there's not questions yet. Those are just me typing notes.
Well, there's at least one, but I got you.
When I hear y'all say awesome stuff, I have to put it in the notes just so that we can remember it.
Got it.
So I want to put a trust equation out there. This might be, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, Abram, before.
Oh, let me hear what you got.
But there's a trust equation for a team. So it's trust equals, and I'll put this in the chat so y'all can see it. But trust equals credibility plus reliability plus intimacy over self-orientation. So I think you said all of those things that you did.
Yeah.
Credibility, like you have to be a credible leader.
That's right.
You have to be reliable. I think even our team members, when they're not reliable, they lose trust about the second week of Chick-fil-A if they their shift, right? So you got to be reliable. There has to be a level of intimacy between you and your team. And that's not like physical intimacy that people think about, but it's an emotional intimacy.
That's right. You've got to be vulnerable.
Right. And then self-orientation, which you got to know where you at and where you stand with each individual person. And the cool thing about this trust equation is, and this is something, Abram, that I can send you a little something later, but is that each person that you're dealing with on your leadership team or your team, one of those things is way more important than the others.
Oh, that's right. That's right. There's a book out there. It's like love languages for a workplace.
Yeah.
So
yes.
Spot on there.
It depends on your makeup, your wiring.
Yeah.
Like for me, credibility and reliability are really important. Intimacy, not so much, but that's just my makeup and my wiring.
Yeah.
However, there's some people on my team where intimacy is their top thing that they need to trust me as a leader. And so I've had to learn how to structure my week and my time in order to create intimacy with that leader. And a lot of times it's just like a check-in, and it's not a Slack message or a text message, like, how are you doing? That's not going to work. It actually has to be me stopping what I'm doing and saying, hey, how are things going? Like personally, professionally, let's go through like a 5-minute check-in. And then they throw at me how they're feeling. And then it kind of clears the air too. For the leaders who really need that intimacy. It's like, if I'm not paying enough attention, their trust level of my leadership starts to fall. And so that you don't really think is important, like you're like, really out of credibility, reliability, those are the two most important. Well, that's because that's what you value as important. Whereas your leaders on your team, you have to know exactly what they need from you, because you're like, I'm a great leader. They should trust me. I show up all the time.
That's right. That's right.
Knowledge, they should just, they should trust me no matter what. Yeah. And because you don't have that intimacy piece or the credibility piece or whatever it is, they don't really trust you as a leader. And what you're saying about trust, there's the 5 dysfunctions of a team, good book, but there's a trust triangle or a results triangle. And if you want to produce results, at the top is results, at the bottom is trust. And so if you don't have trust, you don't have anything else. Results will never be what you want them to be. Yeah. So just a couple of tools there, but I'll put those in the notes.
No, that's good. That's good.
Thank you so much, Giovanna. Always a timely and just rich word there. So that is a good transition to our next question. We're going to kind of bounce around here. How do you balance short-term goals with long-term vision when driving results?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing is understanding, again, like I said, leading and lagging measures. And so I've got to use those leading and lagging measures to kind of help me understand, again, what reality is. And then based on what reality is, we can go and hit those things, right? So short-term goals for us are like they're stepping stones, right? You've got to have short-term goals to get to long-term goals. But I think the biggest thing that I think Chick-fil-A has done a great job at is making sure that whatever that long-term vision or that timeless North Star is, it doesn't ever get pushed outside based on what's going on right now and what's important right now. So for example, even right now, right, within Chick-fil-A, we just refreshed our service model, but even with that refresh, we didn't go and take and say, okay, we're going to get rid of our corporate purpose. Our corporate purpose is the same as it's been since 1982, right? To glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that's entrusted to us and to have a positive influence on all that coming into contact with Chick-fil-A, right? So we've got to figure out like our individual businesses. We're doing it right now in our business. My operator, he and his wife, they are, thinking about me leaving, right? And so they're thinking about, okay, so for the next 5 years, what do we want our long-term vision to be? And that's going to be our North Star. And so I think it's a balance between the two, and I think they work together in order for you to set a course.
No, I couldn't agree more. I don't have too much to add to that. I think you kind of knocked that one out of the park a little, really well. What role does accountability play in leading yourself and your team, and how can leaders foster a culture of accountability?
Oh my gosh, this is apparently going to be the trust talk tonight, right? You got to have trust, right? I've got to know, if you're my leader, Alex, I've got to know without a shadow of a doubt that you have my best interest in mind, right? Because you've got two things that could happen there, right? Either you're leading somebody, you're influencing them for the good, or you're manipulating them, right? That's the opposite of it. When you take the opposite of influence and use it for bad, you're manipulating people. And I think we have to check ourselves first as leaders to make sure that we're not holding accountability so that we look good, right? You kind of talked about this earlier, Giovanna, right? But we're doing it because it's the right thing to do, right? So are we checking our motives? And so, when you think about that, I have to have truth tellers in my life, right? So my wife, talked about this in the last thing we had together. My wife will tell me like it is, and I don't always like it, but hey, that's what she's there for. My mom, I've got so many people in my life that are like, look, I know you think you're great and you're the best thing since sliced bread, but here's the deal. Or on my leadership team, I've got leaders that will look at me and say, I know they were moving slow, but you could have said that differently. You're right. Let me follow up. I didn't even. I was already thinking about what we're doing 6 months from now. I wasn't even thinking about that interaction there, but I'm glad you brought that to my attention. And then I did something about it, right? Because the other thing is too, right? When you have these truth tellers, but you don't ever apply anything that they tell you, then I'm like, man, I'm not gonna waste my breath and talk to this person. It's silly. I'm not gonna do that. And so accountability is key. You got to have self accountability, and you have to have accountability for others, right? This is a basic leadership tip here, and it's pretty simple. People do what you allow. So like every day I allow the team member to come in with headphones in, and they're working their whole shift with headphones. And then one day randomly, I'm like, oh, we got corporate coming tomorrow, no headphones. I've lost all my credibility as a leader. And now this person from Atlanta, they only see one time a year, now has all leadership credibility. And they know now when Mark comes in, we got to do it because Mark's here. But you don't really stand for anything as a leader. So you got to have accountability.
Is there such a thing as too many truth tellers? I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm just kidding.
I do think there's an answer there. I think for me, right, I've had to develop a circle of trust. Like sometimes people are going to tell you stuff and you do want to take it with a grain of salt. Like when I'll never forget when I told people I was pursuing Chick-fil-A full time, they were like, what are you talking about? Something. And I had to take it with a grain of salt because I knew, right, what my long-term vision was for my life. And when God told me that was what my vision was, he didn't consult them. So
No, I feel it. No, I was being slightly
I know you're
sarcastic.
being silly. But
I was
because
just,
a lot of people want to say something. They always, people always want to speak into something, and sometimes you got to just shut some of that down.
yeah, yes,
It
yes.
depends on who it is and
Yes.
like what their credibility in your life. Like,
that's so true.
People always have an opinion. That
Yes.
doesn't mean that it's a good thing. Like you don't have to listen to it. But I was going to say this too about accountability, Alex.
Yep.
Like when people hear the word accountability, especially like our team, you say, "Oh, we got to hold them accountable." Accountability isn't just having hard conversations.
Oh my gosh, so good.
Is encouragement. Like that is accountability. So we'll use something basic in the restaurant, but like you see a team member make an ice cream cone the correct way.
Yes.
Hold them accountable for that. Like, hey, you totally killed that. Like, you can bring in food costs. You can bring in, that next time the guest comes, we're going to be able to be consistent with what we have. But I honestly am so tired of when I say the word accountability that everyone's like, we have to talk to them. We have to tell them something's wrong. I'm like, no. Accountability is just communicating with the team, whether it's behavior or a bad behavior. And if you hold them accountable in the good times and the things that they do really, really well, they're going to listen to the accountability where, hey, this is a behavior that you just need to change. And so I want to change the stigma in Chick-fil-A world specifically around accountability, because I hear so often, hold them accountable, hold them accountable, hold them accountable. And I'm like, yes, we need to hold them accountable. But like, True Kathy said, who needs encouragement? If anyone's breathing, you need encouragement, right? And so I think we need to change the stigma around accountability, because we always use it in a negative context. We got to hold the team accountable. We got to hold the team accountable. And I'm like, yeah, we do need to hold them accountable, but we really need to work on the positive accountability and not just the negative accountability.
Yeah, no, I think just to add to that, Giovanna, I think when we had Eric on the line a few months ago, he mentioned something to the effect of wanting to motivate people for the behaviors that you want to see and then challenge them on the behaviors that you think are problematic. So I think that speaks or pours into this conversation around accountability. Like you said it very well, Giovanna, just let's motivate you in a positive way by holding you accountable in a positive way in the things that you're doing right, but then challenging you on those areas that you can improve upon. And I think both of those things have to exist if you're going to be effective in your leadership.
I mean, it's like parenting. I mean, I have 2 kids. Abram, you have 2 small kids. I have a 16-year-old, so I've been in the parenting world for a good while. And I would say when I was a young parent, I parented with harsh accountability. It's like, don't do this, don't do that, do it this way, do it that way. But instead, like when my son now, and I'm hoping that if I were to pull him in this room and ask him this question, but like I try to motivate him towards the things that he's doing really, really well.
That's so good.
And just saying, hey, like, instead of saying, clean your room, clean your room, clean your room, clean your room, do this, do that. When he cleans his room, I'm like, son, you killed that. Your room looks awesome.
Yes.
Because then he's going to want to continue that behavior. And I think that's what we need to focus on more is the way that we can push them towards the behaviors that we do want. I had a girl, this is just a short story for this, but I had a girl in the restaurant the other day, and she came up to me, and she's maybe 16, 17, kind of is afraid of me. I can tell, like the big boss is here, right? And she came up to me and she said, Miss Giovanna, I'm going to take these boxes to the back. Is there anything you would like for me to grab for you? And I was like, yes. Like she's not going to walk all the way to the back and then walk all the way back up to the front without lemonade or ice cream or something like that. And I was on drinks. And I was like, hey, Jaden, thanks so much for asking that question. Can you grab me some lemonade? And she said, yes, ma'am, I'll do that. And like 15 minutes later, I had this little Chick-fil-A box that one of our leaders made, and it says, you're awesome. And it had a little candy in it or whatever. And I just walked up to her, and in front of everybody else on the team, I said, hey, I just want you to know you killed that. Like, you didn't just walk to the back. Like, that's something that I see team members do all the time. You actually asked, how may I serve you? And she, the rest of the day, was beaming from ear to ear. And I'm like, I guarantee you now, every time she goes to the back to take trash, she's going to ask, hey, is there anything else I can get for you guys when I'm coming back up? Like, that's the behavior I want.
Yeah, no,
that's so good.
That's excellent. And I'll just to kind of close this topic, I'll just end with I think a lot of us have maybe read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, and he talks about chemically the body, when you get those positive affirmations for doing certain things, your body is yearning for that type of interaction. So as us as leaders, when we motivate people to do the right things, they're getting that little hit of dopamine and saying like, oh wait, okay, my boss or my leader thinks that that's a good thing. I want to continue that action because I get that instant gratification. I get that internal feeling that makes me feel good about what I'm doing. So no, I love the dialogue there. Next question, Abram. How do you tailor your leadership approach to meet individual needs of team members while driving overall results?
I think you got to understand where everybody's at. And, a lot of these things are cyclical, right? Because I think in leadership, we're not always reinventing the wheel. It's just a matter of executing on the things that we know consistently, right? And I think the hard part about all this is you're doing it under different sets of circumstances, right? It's easy in a situation like this to, hey, Alex, tell me about yourself. Alex, what frustrates you under pressure, right? And ask all these kinds of questions, right? But the ability to discern how to lead someone in a situation of immense pressure is, I think, where most leaders struggle. I know it's where I've certainly struggled in the past, because the fact of the matter is that there's always going to be some kind of factor that is going to cause your mind to think about something that's maybe more important than that person's need, right? I think most people have a lot on their plates at all times. And so we've got to slow our minds down to think about what's right in front of us. And so for me, I've taken that approach of getting to know my people, having regularly scheduled check-ins. One thing that I've done at our restaurant is they have to put a monthly achievement plan. And it just talks about what are their goals personally and professionally for the month. And they fill it out, and then we talk about it for an hour each month. And that allows for, it gives them time to talk to me about what's important to them. And then outside of that, working alongside them so that I can see how they interact with other people. Sometimes, that may be me working in the kitchen, but even though I'm in the kitchen, I'm observing what's happening in the dynamics and the relationships up front on the other side of the shoot. And I'm not getting involved. I'm just seeing, how is this going to play out? I've got these two new leaders together, or these leaders that have had maybe relational challenges in the past. How can I see them work that out? And then based on these observations and based on these meetings, I'm going to go and I'm going to build personal development plans so that I can help these leaders go from here to there in whatever it is they're trying to pursue, whether that's professional or personal.
No, I love that. I think sometimes we undervalue the need to observe situations. I know I'm, and I know, and this might be a little direct to home, but I like Ashley, like I told you earlier, she works with us and she knows that like, I'm just I don't want to be too informal, but I'm just kind of sitting back, just watching kind of, I want to see how that group of, that configuration of team members, let's see how that works out for us. And then you take your notes, and then more importantly, you take your observations and you bring it to the people who you're talking to be able to help them. So no, I think that would be the number one thing to do in terms of trying to tailor your approach. You got to observe what you're looking for, and make those appropriate notes. I love that. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. What tools or frameworks do you recommend for tracking personal and team results? Because as we're looking to get into these different positions, whether it's becoming an operator, getting into LDP, talking about our story is a big deal. It's a big part of it. So what do you use to track? I know you're managing a lot right now. You mentioned earlier there's a lot on everybody's plate, and we can all kind of feel that you're right now. And so we're going to try to speed this up for.
That's okay.
But go ahead.
We're working this thing out. So the reality of it is I use whatever the company's got first. So like people are always like, what do you do for this? If Chick-fil-A has a system for it, I'm going to use that because they've already paid for it. It's built out and I know it works. And that's just in terms of tracking results like in the business. So for example, if I'm looking at customer experience, Chick-fil-A has a beautiful pre-built tracker that comes out every 90 days for customer experience. It tells you what are your 2 worst items to work on, and so on. When it comes to more personal results, right? What I've taken and done is I've gotten advice from people, and they recommend, a lot of people recommend, based on Chick-fil-A's interviewing process, it's behavioral interviews. And so a lot of the ways that people recommend doing that is the STAR method. And so what I've done is I've taken like a journal on just Google Drive, and I made an Excel sheet, and for each letter of that acronym, situation, task, action, result, I build in stories, and I talk to that, and I track it over time. And so that's one of the major ways that has helped me prepare for interviews, right? I don't do a whole lot of memorizing stuff, because I want to be authentic. I'm not trying to, excuse me one second. I'm not trying to go and, I'm not trying to go and give some speech or win a presidential nomination, but I want to come off as my authentic self, and I think that's what Chick-fil-A is looking for too. They're looking for people that are going to come off as their authentic selves, that can talk about where they've been, where they're going, and how they got there, and who they brought with them. And so for me, the star metric is one, and then this is more kind of on a day-to-day, but the Eisenhower matrix is a huge framework that has helped me on my day-to-day. And basically what that does, it's 4 quadrants. The first one is urgent and important. And it basically allows you to take and say, what's urgent and important in my life? What's urgent but not important, right? What's not urgent and not important, right? And then it allows me to say, okay, what should I be doing? What should my team be doing? And what should nobody be doing? Because it's none of those things. Because I think so many times it's easy in the restaurant industry where one person's having an emergency, and it now has become everyone's emergency. And I've had to tell leaders in the past, look, I get this is important to you, but if you had planned better, you would not be in a situation. Therefore, I am not going to stop, drop, and roll. I will maybe give you some tips to get through this, and we can circle back later. But I'm not going to stop my whole day because you knew we had, this big catering day, and you didn't plan. So I guess you may have to come in early and do those box meals.
So I will say, for Giovanna's sake, she has been okay. She already got it. Never mind. I was going to say, can you just give us a really quick, what is that STAR and what is that Eisenhower method? But I think she has it already.
Cool.
Giovanna, do you want us to go just kind of circle back over that again, or are you good?
No, I think that's good. I think so what you said about the first one, use what the company has first. I think we actually do a pretty poor job of that as Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, I agree.
There's so many things on Lead Well. If you are looking for, how other stores are doing it, type it in and it'll basically pull up a whole bunch of things. And a lot of times there's some sort of method on how some other operator's doing it. So I think we could do a better job of that. STAR method. So this is actually something I teach to LDP people who are trying to apply is situation, task, action, result. It can also be the other one that kind of goes with that is CAR, CAR, circumstance, action, result. I feel like STAR is for my people who are very, I call them gavels, and then circumstance, action, results from it. That's for my surfboards. That's like they're surfing through life. They don't have it all.
But what's a gavel?
We like steps. Okay. We like it. Step 1, step 2. You can even call them a stair stepper. That's me. I'm a gavel. Like I do things 1, 2. Like I have checklists. You could. I could send it to you and you'd laugh. But
it's like type A, type B personalities.
Type A, type B personalities. But so circumstance, action, result. That's the other method. It's the same thing, but just with one less step. So I think that's super important. And if you want to get into LDP or become an operator, I keep telling people that come to me that want that. They're like, well, I don't really know what results I'm driven. I'm like, you got to write it down. Yes. You have to just write it down. And then once we start digging into it, we were able to figure that out, but it would have been a lot easier had they had already written down.
Yeah.
So I think that's super good. I have never used the Eisenhower matrix, is what you called it. So I'm gonna look that up.
Oh my gosh. It truly has been a game changer, especially in those early days when we got to the restaurant and it felt like everything was an emergency. Like we don't have staffing. Nobody knows how to break correctly. We don't have iPads that are charged for iPadOS. I mean, it just felt like, what's going on? And so
there's always a fire, and there's no fire
always a
extinguisher.
fire. I'm telling you, what's up with that?
Yeah, and even more than that, once you start to figure out how to put out the fires, I'm like, y'all, we got to prevent the fires, prevent the fires. Like, stop. I can't live every day where I'm like, put out that fire, put out that fire. I mean, on Friday we only have one restaurant right now. We have two, but one of them is being in a remodel process, so we're like super crazy busy at our other restaurant. And I looked at Neff, because Neff and I work together, and I'm like, Neff, the drain's clogged, and he's like, I know, that's on my list right now. Because our maintenance guy was on vacation. So it's like, it's just like, sometimes you feel like you just look around and it's like fire.
No, really and truly.
Fire. Which one do I need to deal with first?
Which one? Yeah, so that helps. That definitely helps. Because basically, like, the way it works is, so let's say it's urgent, but it's not important, meaning like it's not like necessarily priority one. That's maybe something you can delegate, right? And so it really helps with just kind of making those decisions, because you already know the drill.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was the part that I thought that was the most refreshing to me. I was going to highlight, just because sometimes you said it really well. Like, an emergency becomes everybody's emergency, and I'm kind of big on, like, we should be doing the things only we can do, especially at a level of leadership. Like, of course, now, one of our team norms is everybody takes out the trash, and I believe in that. But there are seasons for that, and there's when there's people there that can take the trash out. I think there was an operator who worked in my market. He retired recently, and he said, there are times in the business where you're going to be making $10 an hour decisions. And there are times where you're going to make $10,000 an hour decisions. And so you've got to make sure that you're living and doing more tasks that are going to be high payoff tasks and not the other tasks, right? It's important to be seen doing certain things, right? You want to be a servant leader. You want people to know that you're going to do what you've asked them to do. But at the end of the day, in order for us to take care of our teams the way you want to take care of them, right? We have to have margin. Truett said it best. Without profits, there's no margins to take care of our families. We're not a non-profit business. Now, if you are in the non-profit sector, I don't know how that works, but I'm sure that there's some kind of metric that you have to hit in order to determine success as well. And, I'm not going to, for example, I do not like having leaders open or close the restaurant at the director level, because I feel like that's an hour where I have my highest paid leader where they could potentially be impacting customer service. The customer's never going to come in and thank us for getting out on time at close. They're never going to thank us for pouring tea and lemonade quickly or getting the truck put away quickly. Now, we know they do add value to their experience, but they're non-direct value. So we want to make sure we have the right people doing the right things. No, excellent. So before we jump into questions, is there anything that you would like to kind of leave us with? Any nuggets of wisdom that you have, Abram, that you would like to share with us?
I just think in this season, we kind of hit on it earlier, but make sure that you know what season you're in. Can you define the reality for your business? Your business is different than my business, and so on. And so, can you define reality? Can your leaders define reality? And are you acting on that reality? Do you have truth tellers in your life that are going to tell you the truth? This is not the season of yes men and women. We need people that are going to challenge us to be better men, women, and leaders. And obviously we know this. The first person that we can lead is ourselves. Before you lead anyone else, you have to lead yourselves well. It's always so sad. It's so terrible when you hear about these legacies. And you see these people that had great careers, great lives lived. Then all of a sudden, maybe all these scandals start coming out, and you're like, oh, wow, maybe they were a great leader, but they did not have enough personal integrity to lead themselves well. And now all that credibility they had is gone.
No, love that. So Ashley or Neff, or Ashley, would you mind fielding the questions in the chat if you can? Thank you so much, Abram. Before we get to that,
my pleasure.
Big round of applause for you. I think you have done a wonderful job tonight. I know we didn't exactly hit on every single question, but I think the content that was shared here was remarkable. My dear friend Giovanna, always thank you so much for your input and value. It is always valuable whenever you give us wisdom. So thank you again, Abram. But Ashley, take us away with questions.
Okay, question number one. How do you manage to balance your time, managing your responsibilities as an executive in your restaurant with being a husband and a father?
It's really hard. And just like anything, it happens with seasons. I don't believe in this theory of a work-life balance. I think you have a focused life and you focus on what's important to you and the season you're in. And I think you have to be aligned with whomever you're doing life with so that you guys are on the same page. Because, and you also have to have forethought, right? You cannot, like I tell my leaders all the time, you spend too much time planning strategically in the restaurant than you plan in your life. How is it that we have great food costs? You've done a great job stewarding the food costs, but you have not fixed your credit score yet. And I'm not saying it to bash anybody or anything like that, but it's just the truth. It's like you are helping fulfill this person's dream, but you are not doing the things you need to do to fulfill your own. I heard it recently. Truett said, Truett said it's the truth, but Truett said leaders don't hire people to run your business that don't do a good job managing their personal life. So I just have to say, like, I'm not saying we don't go through hard times and we don't have seasons of struggle, but don't stay there. And so when it comes to our personal life, my wife and I strategically plan. We meet, we talk about what's next. We talk about what season we're in. Even as we applied for operator, we were aligned on that. It wasn't just like, hey, I'm doing this, come along. No, like, and I everybody's life's different, so I'm not trying to preach to you. I'm just telling you what works for me. And being aligned and making sure my wife knows what's going on works. Also, my wife works in the business, so that helps. But if she didn't, it all goes back to effective communication. Hey, we're really short staffed right now. Hey, the business is going into a season right now where customer service being important is even more important than it's ever been, right? So I may have to work a little bit of a different schedule than I worked in the past, right? But again, it just can't be on the fly. Like, I can't wake up tomorrow unless it's like an actual crisis and like, oh, I know we typically do dinner on Tuesdays, but I'm going to work till 11 o'clock. I mean, you must want to sleep on your couch.
Yeah. So what you said there was good. So when people talk about work-life balance, I just call it life balance. So when they say, I don't have good work-life balance, I say, you don't have good life balance. I'll start with that because I think that is seasonally. I can say this from having older children as well. I have 16-year-old and then I also have 9-year-old. So I'm kind of in these two different seasons. I know, crazy. And my husband works in the business. We're a Chick-fil-A ship. We've been married 18 years. So we've worked all across the board. Like he was a GM at one point. Like it's been crazy. I'm just going to go with that. But the other thing I would say, Abram, is at the end of the day, this is a job. Chick-fil-A is a job. Like family is more important.
Oh, that's so good.
Than Chick-fil-A. And there are times where I feel like Chick-fil-A takes over, and especially with success-driven people. And what somebody asked me one time, like they were like, what's it like running two businesses and also being a mom? I'm like, man, running two businesses is way easier than being a mom. Like,
you better believe it. Believe it.
Like
I can turn that off.
Right. Well, then also too, just like seeing results in your children versus seeing results that you can produce in 3 months at Chick-fil-A or even 2 days or 3 days. And so I think that, I would say these like high driven success, like we just want success. It's way easier to do that in the business than it is with your own children.
Yes.
And so there are times where that takes over. And I will say this, as my son is a junior, I'm like, spend time with your kids, y'all. Yeah. Like chicken is going to be there. It will be there. I guarantee you tomorrow we will be selling chicken again. And the next day we'll be selling it again. And so really, I think just remember at the end of the day, yes, we are leading people and we want to make a difference. But if you can't make a difference at home, really, like I had an operator one time tell me that his greatest fear was that he would run a really successful business, but his kids would be a hot mess.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
And I'm like, I want us to remember that this still is just a job, and our families, your kids, your wife, like that relationship is so much more important than the people that we're leading every day. And I don't mean that in a bad way.
No,
I love my
not
leaders.
at all. Not at all.
So
Yeah, I heard Dan Cathy say, you're going to have to be your wife's husband a whole lot longer than you will work for Chick-fil-A. You're going to have to be that child's dad a whole lot longer, right, than you will work at Chick-fil-A. And, when you think about, when you pass away at some point and there's a life, that goes on after you, right, what's going to be said about you, right? Is your daughter going to remember that you never were at any events, or do they remember, that when everybody else, because, that's kind of why we do some of this, right? It's for the flexibility, right? Do they remember that, man, my dad was the only dad that was at this game in the middle of nowhere at 2:00 in the afternoon when everybody else's parents are working, right? And so, such good nuggets there, Giovanna. It is just a job at the end of the day.
No, I love that. I think that even goes into Chick-fil-A Leader Academy. They ask the students, would you like to be remembered for your accomplishments or your relationships? So they with that. So I guess the probably last question we have time for, at what point in the process on focusing on relationships when rebuilding at the restaurant did results begin to follow? You choose relationships over results, and I wanted to understand more into how that has presented in your current role.
That's good. So I guess let me start with this. With anything, there's a baseline, right? There's a guardrail, there's a baseline, right? So for our first 90 days when we got there, we didn't coach anything but food safety, and I would say like guest de-escalation, right? So if somebody's cussing someone out, we jumped in to bring that temperature down, right? If somebody's clearly doing something that is going to get a person sick or potentially kill them, we would jump right in, right? Otherwise, we're making notes and so on. And so as a result, after we spent that first 90 days observing, building relationships and introduction, stuff like that, then we were able to start implementing quarterly plans each 90 days thereafter. And so I would say probably about 6 to 12 months after taking over that restaurant, we started to see some results. The next full year, the first full year we were there, we actually achieved some book success. We got guarding the brand, I want to say by year 3, but before that we were sitting at like a 2 from the food safety score. But I would say the biggest results that we had was the trust of the team, right? Seeing them after they have been through such I'm not sure what time we jumped on this question, but like I said, the restaurant I had been in had 3 leadership or owner transitions within a 24-month period. And so as a result, there was not a lot of trust of senior leadership. And so just getting them on board, that was the easy part. I mean, that was the hard part. The easy part was actually getting the results, because once they trusted us, they were willing to do what we were asking.
I think you said earlier too, Abram, like being clear is being kind.
That's right.
And I love that saying as well. And so I think you have to, with your team, with those relationships, focus on keep the main thing. Like that's
right.
I say a lot is keep the main thing.
Yes.
So if you are clearly communicating that vision of what you want, then the results will show up. Now, and Neff would probably speak to this a little bit. It's like if you're playing whack-a-mole, like where you're like, I'm trying to get this result, but I'm trying to get this result, and then I want this result, and I want this result, but can you make that result happen? And with Chick-fil-A, we could make a scorecard that has 100 metrics on it.
Literally.
And so I think that's where you have to really just say, like, keep the main thing. So for you, if food safety, which I think if you look at the winning heart strategy, which, if you're on here in your Chick-fil-A, you know that they just updated that, and they're basically merged the winning heart strategy with the create raving fan strategy and put them together and made a baby. But that winning heart strategy starts with clean and safe environment. And if you don't have clean and safe environment, you can't have great food. If you don't have great food, you can't have fast and accurate service. You don't have fast and accurate service, you can't have genuine hospitality. And one thing that when I look at the winning heart strategy, when I taught this to people, it's like, to me, clean and safe environment and great food, that's every restaurant. That's first mile service. Like you don't go to places if it's not a clean environment and the food isn't good. So those two are non-negotiable. So whoever wrote this question, I think the first thing I would start with are looking at those metrics. What metrics are important to your restaurant? And if you're struggling across the board, just say, okay, look, we have to have a clean and safe environment, and we have to have great food. Like those two things are non-negotiable because we are a restaurant.
That's right.
And so I would start with those metrics, and I would start with that message to the team of like, this is what we're trying to do. The rest will come in time. But you have to keep the main thing. And then I would say have short-term measures and long-term measures. Like short-term results will produce that long-term vision that you want. And those short-term results are what will get the team excited. Now, for yourself, you might be like, well, I want to hit 15%, like I want to get to 15% net profit, or I want to get to whatever it is. But if you communicate that result to the team, literally they don't care about that. So
that's so true.
The result that you want, you have to say, okay, how can I communicate this to the team? So to me, if you're talking about clean and safe environment, okay, use basic clean and safe environment things. Hey, we're going to check the restroom every hour. When that happens and you do it for a straight week, you celebrate that because that's what's a clean and safe environment. That's where it's going to get you. And so I think you just have to realize your audience as well, and like what you communicate to your director team versus what you communicate to your team leader team, and what you communicate to your like the communication cannot be the same because they don't care. Yeah, they don't care about, well, we scored this on our EFSA. They're like, what is an EFSA and who even cares about that? So
No, that was great. And so I want to cut in. I know it's 8:00, Abram. You have been doing a remarkable job balancing life as you have been doing this conversation with us today. And so I want to be respectful of your time. We'll loop back. I'll connect with you offline.
Sure.
I appreciate you, man. And you have yourself a good night. For the rest of you guys.
Take this mind of mine. All right. It's great to be sitting here with my boy Alex. We're talking all things hospitality, all things leadership. It's amazing to see what he's doing with the pivot experience and everything he's doing, the leadership boy. I'm Sean DeVries, so I'm from Australia. You'll see me from Melbourne, obviously, here with Principal of Hospitality and Open Pantry Consulting.